harmony. Now, another thing about this song, if we play this, even though it's played one note after the other, your ear is still kind of hearing this as a C major chord. It's hearing it like this. Okay. Now, you'll notice that he is doing what I like to call voice leading here. He's telling you right off the bat with your left hand. Your left hand is going to lead the voices. Now, even though this is a piano piece written for piano, you can still think of it as multiple voices. Now, I like to think of this as bass, tenor, and you might as well say alto, soprano, or something here. In other words, this is a voice, this lowest note, this next note is another voice, and then these voices up here in the high part are one voice. So it'd be interesting to have somebody sing this, or three people sing it. Now, what he's doing here, his bass note is C. This is the first note of this song. The tenor comes in with this E. So, right off the bat, it's giving you a clue. C major. If it was C minor, it'd be playing this. If he just played the fifth, that wouldn't tell you what's going on. So, there is a concept in music called voice leading, and this song does that. Okay. Now, in measure 2, we've got C to D. Measure 3, we've got B to D, and then back to C to E. Now, you'll notice this is a half note, and it's held for half the measure. Okay, so this is a half note. So basically, each measure is 2 half notes. And then you'll notice that there's a slight rest here, and then this other voice comes in. So this is a 16th rest. So a 16th note later, here comes this guy. Well, this note is being held, and this note is just simply held. For those of you that may not understand what's going on here with this notation, this dot and this tie and this other quarter note is simply telling you, first it's telling me to play this C right off the bat, then it's telling me to play this E real quickly, and just hold both of these notes through half the measure. Okay? And then up here, I'm just simply repeating these 16ths. So every one of these is a 16th note. There's 3 of them here, 3 of them here. That's 6 16th notes. And we have an 8th note rest. So if you do your math, an 8th note rest is 2 16ths, and then 6 more 16ths, that equals a half of a note. So an 8th, 16th notes, 6 16th notes equals the duration of this half note here. So if you're struggling with note values, don't worry about it right at the moment. Okay, so the whole song is just played one note after the other, but your first 2 notes are held while you play these notes up here. I played that doubled up. But anyways, this is very important, okay? So right off the bat, he's telling you that with this first pair of notes, that this song is going to be in C major. Bam, C major. Now, in Bach's day, when you were going to have a dissonant chord, the taste, the style, however you want to describe it, it was very important to them, and all of your composers in the classical era wrote in a very meticulous style of what we call preparation and resolution of dissonances. Now, by preparation, I simply mean that if I know, and I know that his second measure is this, okay, this D minor chord, I'm sorry, actually the notes are here, okay, it's D, F, A, or D, F, A, excuse me, it's the D minor, but I've also got this C. Now the C comes in as what we call a 7. So basically, if you just spread it out, you would have a 7th chord on the second note of the scale. So this, but like I say, this is dissonance. When I add this 7th, I've got a slight dissonance right here. Now, when I say, when I say dissonance, don't think that that's a bad thing. It's the yang. So the yin is this, slight dissonance. Okay. Most people may not even pick up on that, but if you want to learn about music theory and classical harmony, you need to dissect this. Okay. So preparation simply means to take this note, this C here, and introduce it with the dissonant note in these 4 is the C to the D. Okay. So to prepare for that, I've already introduced it one measure before. So the C has been held. So there's no shock to the ear. I've already heard the C. If I just started this song perhaps maybe like this, I don't know how to describe it, but it's not a huge deal. This is not going to make anybody run out of the concert, but there is a dissonance here. Okay, so every 7th chord has this dissonance. So to prepare for it, I take this dissonant note and I introduce it prior to it coming in. So that's preparation. Now when I resolve it, I simply move it down a note. And that's what happens. So my dissonant note was the C, which was introduced one measure ago. Now I'm going to take this dissonant note and bring it down 1, okay, and that's what he does here. So the 7th moved down a note, okay, and it allowed for this chord. Now, if you're following along, hopefully you'll know that the dissonant note of this chord is this F. The triad is the G major, major 3rd here, G to B is a major 3rd, minor 3rd to D, another minor 3rd gives you that 7th chord, the so-called 5-7 to C, which is this G7th chord. Okay, it's got 2 dissonant intervals. It's got the F to the G, and it's got this B and F, which is a tritone. So you've got 2 dissonant intervals in this chord. So this chord is actually more dissonant than this one. Okay, why is that? Well, my only dissonance in this minor chord is the C to the D. Because the C to the F, that's consonant, the D to the F, that's consonant, the F to the A is consonant, the D to the A is consonant. That's a 5th, minor, or major 3rd, a 5th, a major 3rd, a minor 3rd, a 4th. So there's really not much dissonance there, but it is there from this C to this D. This C was introduced one measure before, and to resolve it, I'm going to move away from it, so I just move one note down. It's very common to do that. And that takes me to the third of the next chord, which is the 5 chord. Okay, so when I take this 7 and I move this voice here down one note, I'm landing on the third of the 5 chord. And that's actually a very important thing too. Now the same thing happens when I have this 5-7 chord. Again, it's simply the G major chord with another third, minor third added on top. Now, why is it, this is also called a minor 7, okay? So from in the G scale, the G major scale, you would have this F sharp as opposed to this F. So in the G minor scale, this F is part of the G minor scale, okay? So this is a stack of thirds, major third, minor, minor. So this, in this case, in this measure, this F is the dissonant note to this chord. And you'll see that it was introduced one measure ago. So from here to here, I'm going to hang on to this C, and it turns out it's dissonant to this D minor chord, but I've already introduced it, so it's no big deal. The ear is accustomed to it. C major, D minor 7. Now I'm going to take this C note and move it down one and switch to this 5-7 chord, okay? And my dissonant interval here, in terms of this triad, is this F, but it was introduced over here. So we have a dissonant note in this measure, this second measure, that was introduced one measure ago. This note moves down to resolve. So to prepare for this dissonance, it was introduced a measure before, and to resolve the dissonance, it moves down. Hear it again. C goes to D, or to B, which is the third of the 5 chord. Now this 7th of this 5 chord was introduced before, so it was prepared, and now look what happens. It's going to be resolved downward. So here's the progression again. This 7th, this C in this case, moves down. The F was already established in the measure before. Now this F is dissonant. Now look what happens. This F moves down. Okay. So here it is as written. You can hear that these voices, like I say, I like to think of this as a 3-voice composition. One voice, the second voice, and the third voice. So this voice and this voice. And you can see a very deliberate, meticulous approach to the consonants and the dissonance of these chords. There again, these are chords. That are brought about by this voice leading. C major. Now this could go a different direction. Just because I play this E after this C You know, I could play any number of notes, but just in this particular case, he's telling you, look, this is going to be a song in C major. So right off the bat, the first two notes of the song are those two. The next two notes in this with my left hand are this. Sorry. First two notes, second two notes. I'm leading the voice to D. Now I'm going to take it to G. And then back to C. Okay. Now, when we talk about voice leading, another thing we try to do is we try not to jump all over the place. Okay, so you could easily go, but in this case, he wanted this bass line to be very melodic. Now, if I play, here's about maybe a dozen measures of just playing these first two notes of each measure. So you can see he does later in the song move about, but for about the first quarter of it here, the bass voices don't move very far. Okay, so there's a lot to be learned just by listening to these two bass notes. Okay, and like I said, the whole song, I'm not going to play it for you today, but I will when I finish the whole series of videos here. I'll play it for you. But like I said, it's not to show off how great of a player I'm not, or that I am, because I'm not a great player. But I have done a lot of study, and I want to share that with you. So hopefully, you know, you'll get some good information here. So, anyways, download the song, print it out, play it, check back here very soon. I'm going to go further into this. Today, just for a recap of what I've talked about, some of the concepts here: establishment of tonality, just basically playing all of the notes of the C scale. There's no mistaking this. This song, at least in these four measures, is absolutely in C major. It's not in A minor, it's not in G major, it's not in any of these other keys. It's absolutely in the key of C, because you just simply played all the notes of the C scale. Some music theory terms here are classical harmony and chord progressions. By the way, this 1 major, 2 minor, 5/7, back to the 1 chord. This is the most common chord progression in all of music. 1, 2 minor, 5 major with a 7, and 1. You'll find that everywhere, and just all throughout music. Now, not to say that every song should have it, because it doesn't, but classical, gospel, country, you name it. You're going to hear, any Western music, you're going to hear this type of a chord progression. So anyways, the first 4 measures of this song have taught us so much about the history of music to follow. Okay? Now, when I talk about this preparation and resolution thing of these dissonant tones, do not think of these as rules. These are observations. Okay? So when you start studying music theory, a lot of musicians get turned off by music theory because they say, well, I have a natural ear and natural ability and all these things, and I don't want to get caught up in any of these rules and stifle myself. Music theory is basically the study of what the composers did and how they did it. It's not to establish a whole bunch of rules that you have to live by. This is just simply describing classical music in Bach's time and the way it was written. when you had a dissonant chord that was going to appear somewhere in a piece of music, chances are, 99% of the time, it was prepared and resolved. Preparation meaning that when I knew that I was going to have this dissonant chord in the next measure, I would anticipate that dissonant note, whatever it may be, by playing it in this measure. And then I would resolve that dissonant note by moving that voice down a little bit. So we've talked about consonants and dissonance, triads and seventh chords. Remember that a triad is simply a three-note chord. We'll talk about our basic major and minor chords, like I talked about in my first video. It's the note, it's fifth, and a major or minor third. And then if I add a seventh chord, if I make it into a seventh chord, that's simply adding another third. Okay? In this case, that's a minor third from the G. Okay? And that's a major third from the G. So these are two different types of chords here. You'll find these chords throughout music, okay? The classical era, from Bach all the way up to Brahms, so from the 1700s all the way up to the 20th century, 99% of it was based on the composers were chord-minded, if you will, and it was the multitude of different types of chords that were based around this idea of taking a root note, stacking all these different thirds. Okay, and they extended it all the way out to ninths and tenths and 11ths and 13ths and so on. And this song actually includes some of those more complicated chords. And when I go through the rest of the piece, little by little, I hope to teach you about some of those complicated chords. So, but for the first four measures, and to introduce this series of videos, I'm just going to go through what I've talked about here. But there's a lot of different concepts here that I hope that you'll be introduced to. So we've got triads and seventh chords, arpeggios versus block, preparation and resolution of dissonances, and like I say, the way later on in the song you'll see that even though this is the prelude in C, it includes every note. And so I hope you get some information from it. I promise I'll try to prepare for these videos a little bit better and not be so long-winded and rambling. But please ask questions if you have them. I'll be happy to answer them. And if you'd like for me to talk about some other things, just let me know.